Hey, welcome back to JW Informed Consent. And today I wanted to discuss how and why clarifications from the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses distorts time and history by the way they use language. And at times the language doesn't seem genuine and is even manipulative. Not all the times, but enough of the time. Now, I've always been a fan of a good time travel sci-fi movie. Back to the Future is hands down my favorite movie franchise of all time, right? There's a common theme with these time travel movies, right? They end up going back in time to fix something, or they end up there, they change something, and then it changes the future, and then they're trying to fix it. So, good stuff. It's been my favorite. I always thought Michael J. Fox was a cool dude. He always seemed like a nice guy. I feel bad for him. He's got Parkinson's, and you can just when I do see him, it's hard to watch him, right? But he's just got that angst in his face dealing with that. So I feel bad for him. But today I wanted to talk about a different type of time and history distortion. How does the governing body distort time and history when they talk about clarifications? CJ Salmagundi, he has a YouTube channel. I don't know that that's his full name. I think Salmagundi means something else, but maybe CJ's his first name. I don't know him. Seems like a cool dude. I watched his channel a lot when I was watching in secret, when I was watching with a private browser window, incognito mode, no YouTube login. But CJ had a video up where he described this, and it was just veritas. It was excellent. The title of the video was To Beard or Not to Beard, and he's removed his videos, but I hope he puts at least some of them back up, especially that one. That was probably one of my favorite. I loved all of his videos, but that one was just really good, the way he articulated through the beard situation and went through Brother Let, who is a member of the governing body, the top ranking members of the Jehovah's Witness religion. He went through what Stephen Let was saying and what it meant and how he was saying different things. Now, when Brother Let talked about the governing body deciding a clarification was needed on beards, that simple word clarification is manipulative, and it's wrong, and it's incomplete at best, right? Because this was a policy change, the policy of going from not allowing Jehovah's Witness men to have any facial hair other than a mustache, to allowing them to have facial hair, to allowing them to have a beard. This was a policy change. This was a rule change. And as CJ eloquently brought out on his YouTube channel, it took the highest ranking members of the JW leadership to change this rule. And so that should indicate to you that there were some other things going on there. That should indicate to us that there was a little bit more than just a clarification, right? Because using that word clarification puts the blame and the problem on the elders, and it puts it on all of the Jehovah's Witnesses in the congregations, and it makes it seem as if we were just all confused, right? And then the governing body heard about all of this confusion, and they jumped in and came to the rescue, and they clarified things. That's how I kind of read that. And that's not what happened. That just is not what happened. And I imagine that this is very similar to how the 1975 fiasco went down. Just think plausible deniability. And the teaching on beards, the rules, the beliefs, it was confusing because of how things were written, right? As elders, we couldn't go to somewhere, and this is a little bit of a continuation from my layers video. I forgot. I wanted to add this, and so I just thought I'm going to make an additional video. But we, as elders, we couldn't go anywhere, or anybody in the congregation, you couldn't go. You could find material that talked about beards, but it was written in such a way where it didn't give an answer. And again, you might be thinking, well, that's good. You just choose for yourself. But no, you can't. You couldn't. That sounds good on the surface if that's what you might be thinking, especially if you were never a witness. But you couldn't just read the Bible and read the material that was a little vague and then come to your own conclusion. You had better come to the conclusion that brothers could not have facial hair, right? Because so in that sense, Jehovah's Witnesses were not confused and were never confused, and the elders were not confused. I want to make that clear. Just my one person simple opinion. The literature was a little confusing, but as elders and all Jehovah's Witnesses knew that you could not have facial hair. You could not wear a beard. A facial hair, a beard, was always a sign of spiritual weakness, and it was a sign of even rebellion. And as witnesses, we believed that those brothers were in danger of being destroyed for their disobedience, especially if they persisted and didn't walk it back, didn't eventually get in line when we reasoned with them. Hey, we reasoned so clearly with you on all of this. Why do you still have the beard? That's what would be going through the mind, basically. So what's the twist? What's the distortion? Well, here's where I believe that the governing body, by their language with this use, so again, we're honing in on that word clarify, clarification. When they use that kind of language, here is how I believe that they distort time and history. When new Jehovah's Witnesses come into this religious organization and they read this material, or they go back and watch old videos, because I did that myself. When I was newly baptized, I was trying to keep up with all the new stuff I was learning, right? You're super excited. But then I was going back and reading old stuff, right? Commentary on the letter of James and these old books. I pulled out the Revelation book because everybody was talking about, a lot of witnesses were talking about how good that Revelation book was, and they had already studied it twice, I believe, by the time I got baptized. So I went back and would look through all that. And videos, now there wasn't as many videos when I got baptized, not like now with JW Broadcasting, but there were some, and so I went back and watched, and you're catching up, and you're kind of, right, witnesses talk about this spiritual heritage, and you're thinking, yeah, I want to know my spiritual heritage, and you go back and you do that. So now when new Jehovah's Witnesses are coming into this religion, they read this material, they're watching these old videos, and they'll watch Stephen Lett talk, and they'll think, well, it sounds like some brothers and even the elders were just confused. It's a good thing the governing body came in and cleared it up. It's obvious that Jehovah is with these governing body men, right? That's how I thought. That's how I thought, like about 1975, for many years, up until recently, until I noticed the manipulation and the magic trick, right? Because again, Brother Lett came out when he was talking about beards. He came out and said, hey, the governing body felt the need to clarify this matter of beards. You brothers, we forgive you, we love you, but we know you're just confused, and we're going to clarify this for you. That's not true, Brother Lett. That's not true. That's not complete. You can say clarify, but how about just admitting that this was a policy change and this was a rule change? Because again, it took the governing body, the highest level of the JW leadership and religion, to allow men to have beards, because before that they wouldn't do that at all. It wasn't it 1984, the book. It's been a long time since I read it. I got to read that again. It's a good dystopic novel there that has a lot of parallels to our world today, like it or not. But in that book, wasn't there, correct me where I'm wrong, wasn't there a Ministry of Truth? Interesting name, right? There was a whole section of government called the Ministry of Truth. And if I remember correctly, they would clip news articles and rearrange facts and just change and instantly distort time and history. It's interesting. And so once you see that manipulation and the magic trick kind of language, you can't unsee it, right? And it's wrong, and I believe that they know what they're doing. Even if they think they're doing the right thing, I think they know what they're doing there. Think of the mafia. If you've seen these old mafia movies or some of the, I remember years ago, these cases were just like in the news, right, on these news time shows. And, the mafia, they come to you, someone from the mafia comes to you and they say something like, "Hey, Henry, your wife Jane is beautiful, and your children Bobby and Cricket, they're just gorgeous little kids. It would be a shame if something happened to them, little Bobby." And you, Henry, you're like, "Wait, hey, are you threatening my family?" "Me? No, just saying, it'd be a shame," right? Or when the mafia would say something like, "I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse," right? So we realize, we understand that there's hidden language in there. There's hidden layers. There's meaning in there. And we get that same sort of language with the governing body. And it just, it hurts. It hurts. Now, what happens when, like with the beard thing, when Stephen Lett came out as he's one of the governing body, he came out and released that JW update video, and the effect, what happens is that is an instant change of Jehovah's Witness beliefs. It's as if 8 million plus JWs instantly get this software update, so to speak, and everyone has to immediately fall in line. And that's why as a JW, you had better keep up with the reading of all the literature and watching of all of the broadcasting updates, or you're going to be left in the dust, so to speak. I remember being an elder when the website and everything got revitalized and we had logins and we could get, instead of paper letters, we were getting them instantly in our inbox. I mean, as elders, because I was on chat threads with elder friends, right, and we just talked through the day and goofed off. But we would be checking that. I know some elders were checking their JW inbox 8 times a day, right? I mean, several times a day. And as soon as something came out, "Hey guys, did you see the new letter? They're changing up how they're doing this," right? And so again, you had better keep up as an elder. Even during the pandemic, the circuit overseer said, "Brothers, read every letter carefully and reread it and tell each other, on your chat thread, tell each other there's a new letter," right? They wanted all of that instant software upgrade to hit every elder at the same time. So, and again, excuse me, as I mentioned, this is sort of a continuation from my layers video, things that I forgot to mention, but a commenter reminded me of something I wanted to mention specifically, but totally forgot. I was like, oh man, I wish I would have put that in there, but I'm not big on editing. I just kind of set it and forget it with these videos. And so I mentioned in that layers, excuse me, I mentioned in that layers video how some brothers would quote scripture when defending the wearing of beards. And at times, and even the defending of, hey, there's nothing scriptural about turning in time, that would come up a little bit, but I would say more on the side of the beards. And by the way, witnesses that would bring this stuff up, they would usually be very careful with that. They knew not to push, but you could see, especially as I think back now, you could see that was on their mind and their heart. So some of these brothers would defend the wearing of beards, possibly even if they didn't have a beard, and they were right in their use of the scriptures. They were reading the Bible, and you're reading it as an elder or as just a regular JW, and they were right. There was nothing wrong. They weren't twisting the scripture. They weren't trying to find loopholes. They weren't trying to be rebellious. They're just like, well, look here. Now, as elders, how did we view that? As elders, we did not view that as a positive thing, but we viewed that as a negative thing. Imagine that. Imagine that. So here you have a brother or sister pointing out some scriptures on things that we as Jehovah's Witnesses weren't doing right, and as elders we viewed that as a negative thing. And what would we say? We would think, and we would even say things like, brother, you're running ahead of God's earthly organization, or you're running ahead of Jehovah's chariot, right? Or brother, we don't want to run ahead of God's chariot, right? So you can hear in those statements, you can tease out of those statements that there's an acknowledgement that the person may be right, but that basically it's not the right time. It isn't the right time. But I would ask, if someone is correctly applying the scriptures and they're reasoning with their brother, isn't the right time now, immediately, when this problem is found out? And I'm not talking about just nitpicking everything, right? Every group, every organization, every family has issues, right? We're fallen, we're imperfect. But if we find something in the scriptures and it isn't right, isn't the time to speak up and to change right away? And perhaps that's the problem with these institutions, these religious institutions, especially when they're 501c3 and they have tax exempt status, and they tend to they must have to follow government direction to a degree. Now, I would ask this too: did the Apostle Paul wait on Jehovah? Right? That's another saying that JWs have: wait on Jehovah, right? And that would go along with, brother, you don't want to run ahead of God's organization. Wait on Jehovah. Now, did the Apostle Paul wait on Jehovah when Peter wasn't acting right? Remember, Peter was acting two-faced. He was acting hypocritical. No, Paul did not wait on Jehovah. Paul called him out right away, and he did so publicly, right? He did it. It's right there. If you would have been there, it would have been quiet in that room, right? I imagine. So I agree it's good to be patient. In the scriptures, it tells us to be patient, right? But this idea of wait on Jehovah is the equivalent. I believe JW leadership has again sort of manipulated the idea of being patient and waiting on God. And I believe the Psalms talks about have your say in your room, on your bed, in private. I believe they have kind of manipulated the meaning there. But I will say, I agree it's good to be patient. But this idea of waiting on Jehovah is the equivalent of other religions saying God is a mystery. Now, as Jehovah's Witnesses, we ripped Christendom up and down for that saying of, well, God is a mystery. Now, when we were away from householders and weren't in front of those people as witnesses, we were just rolling our eyes at that, like, oh goodness, they wait on, or God is a mystery. Yeah, they don't know the truth, because we believe, oh, we have it, we have all that. And we especially ripped Catholics up and down all day for that, right? Oh, God is a mystery. But that idea of wait on Jehovah, it seems like a thought-stopping technique, and an action-stopping technique, because it has the effect of making you do nothing, right, when you should do something. And it has the effect of just making you push this down, right, and deal with that turmoil internally. And so I believe that's all I wanted to share for this video. I just wanted to talk about how that language that the GB uses has the effect of distorting time and history. Because as new people come in and they read about 1975, they talk to others, and now with newer stuff like with turning in service time and beards, they're going to get the impression of that it was truly just a misunderstanding. And actually, I have notes, but I just thought of another one I wanted to share. This idea, and this one really bugged me. Now, when I was a new witness, the idea of any kind of prepping was a complete lack of faith. And we talked about that at length at times, right? The idea of having a go bag was completely out of the question. We never discussed anything like that. Any type of preparation for yourself was viewed as a lack of faith. And I can remember having a number of conversations with elders. I can remember having a number of conversations with conversations with like the circuit overseer, and him sharing the same sort of thing, that we don't need to do any food prep or any, and when you think prepping, you might be thinking, oh, excuse me, someone right in the backwoods with an underground supply of 2 years of food. Well, I guess that is a form of prepping. That's like on the one end of the spectrum. But as witnesses, we were taught we don't need to do any sort of prepping, because Jehovah God is going to take care of us. And I would say that even as recent as 15 years ago, correct me in the comments where I'm wrong. You can go, I didn't look it up in the literature, but you could probably start searching and find around the time when the governing body, when the branch started encouraging us to have a go bag for 2 to 3 days, right? Even now, I would say prepping beyond that, like if even, during the pandemic, as elders, we started talking about saving up a little food, and I think we were even getting food, like the branch sent, they received food somehow and supplies, and they dispersed that to congregations, at least throughout the United States. But as elders, I remember us on Zoom meetings just slicing and dicing, and we were very careful that we didn't want the friends to start prepping for more than like 2 weeks. And we literally arbitrarily came up with that number. Like, it gets to a point where it's just a lack of faith, and we just want to be taken care of right now. And so, again, go back 15 years, that was not a thing. And most witnesses remember it. Some don't, but most do, that prepping, any kind, even having a go bag was kind of off limits. And so that bugged me, because I can remember even as I was waking up, or right before I woke up, I was the Watchtower reader, and there was the whole lesson wasn't about this, but there was at least a paragraph or so about being prepared for disaster when disaster strikes, right? And what bothered me about it is it talked about, hey, yeah, you want to have a few days worth of food and supplies, but you want to be prepared. You want to prep a little bit. But what bothered me is there was no acknowledgement in there that we had a completely different view. And is it necessary to clarify, to use that word, to say, hey, we've changed? I guess not absolutely, but I was bothered that it wasn't in there, that we were just trying to pass this off as if that's what we always believed. And that is not what we always believed. Go back less than 20 years, and that's not what we believed. And then as I think about it, I think, okay, well, how many, if any, JWs suffered or even lost their life because they weren't prepared? Maybe some of them had wanted to prepare, but because of the view that any kind of preparation was a lack of faith, they didn't do it. They didn't do anything. Whereas now they've turned around 180, which is a good thing. But I don't know. I feel like it's good to acknowledge things. Just like even in my job, I'm human, I'm prideful, ego. Sometimes I want to just take credit for everything that I did, but really a lot of times we're helping each other, right? Or someone helped me out. And so I always have the intention and want to and try to acknowledge, oh yeah, so-and-so, hey, thanks for helping me out with that. He helped me get over this. I was blocked here with this problem, but he helped. And that just seemed like an important thing. But again, that shows you how there's a time and history gets twisted, because as new witnesses come in and they start reading about this little thing about just having a go bag, they have the impression that witnesses always had that, when this was a talking point, right? This was a point where we would talk and go back and forth, and it always came down to, if you were prepping at all, you basically were having a lack of faith. You were showing a lack of faith. And so now I think that's it on this topic. And until next time, have a good day.